It's working better on the tablet than it was before.
Right.
I didn't mean to kill you that way.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order at 5:03. We'll start with the roll call. Zach Hoffmeister, I'm here. Ned Dorff.
Here.
Randy Scannell.
Present.
Essie Fells.
Present.
Deb Hutchison.
Here.
Chase Highland is excused. Julia Nordegg.
Here.
Stephanie Ortiz. Not here. Absent, not excused. And Mark Walter.
Here.
All right, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second.
By
All those in favor?
Alder Randy.
By Alder Randy.
Seconded by
Seconded by Essie Fells. Thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved.
Okay, wait, sorry, hold on. Okay.
All right, and then we'll move on to approval of the minutes.
So approve.
First by Randy. Is there a second?
I'll second with one slight change. The word excused is excused.
Okay.
Excused.
Spelling. Okay.
Actually, one of them.
All right, so motion and second by Mark.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that's approved. On to informational. We have Patty from the Transit Department here to
Skip D, regular business discussion.
There is no recommended.
Regular businesses moved
Moved down.
underneath informational.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
looking at,
You're still in the minutes?
Yep, that's it. That's
Just give me 1 second, sorry. Let me just make sure Julia is in here.
I find it confusing when you had a second minutes. I think you did minutes. Second.
All right,
seconds.
go ahead.
That took me a second. All right, so
Yeah, it took him a second.
all right, so we have. I apologize in advance.
That's okay. Mr. Scannell
I'm
is
on the
also
transit
on my
commission.
transit commission.
Oh,
so
Yeah,
I,
so.
on behalf of this commission, we extend our apologies.
Thank you.
Just a support group. Yeah.
Commission to commission.
Cool. Well, thank you for being here to talk about the transit department. We've all got your handout, I believe, so we'll let you take it away.
Yes, so thank you very much for having me. I can talk transit all day, so if I exceed myself, let me know. So I'm Patty Kiewis. I am the director of Green Bay Metro. I have been with Metro for about 15 years, about 5 years as the director. So I kind of put together just kind of some information regarding overall. I can kind of walk through this, and then we can feel free to ask questions as we go along if there's anything. So first of all, for transit, you know, we represent, we are a Green Bay department, of course. However, we do service other area municipalities. And so we service the city of De Pere and the villages of Alway, Bellevue, and Ashwaubenon, in addition to the service of Green Bay. Each participating municipality pays into our system based on, for fixed route service, when I mean fixed route service, that's like the regular buses that you see come around. Each municipality pays in for the fixed route portion of it based on the miles that we travel into each municipality. And then hand in hand with our fixed route service is our paratransit program, which is transportation for those that are unable to access the fixed route bus based on disability. And that is a disability-based only service, and that is billed to each municipality based on population. Is kind of how we're constructed. We're a little bit under a $9 million budget, about a little over 2.2 million of that is local funds. About 1.25 is from the city of Green Bay. So we are highly, federally, and state subsidized. So obviously we rely heavily on grants and those types of things. We have 36 buses in our fleet. They are all clean diesel buses. Some are better than others, just based on the age of our fleet. We do about 2 million miles a year or so, or just under 2 million miles a year. We transport about 1.3 million trips a year is what we provide. Our fleet consists of a range of vehicles, just based on size. So we have 30-footers, we have 35-footers, and we have 40-foot buses. And it just truly depends. We try to keep somewhat of a balance of those. At one time, Green Bay Metro purchased a lot of 30-foot buses, which is not very good for us at this point because I have several routes that I can't use small buses on just because of capacity issues. So we do try to keep somewhat of a balance of those. The ages of our fleet right now, the oldest bus I have is a 2003, and the newest ones I have are 2018s. So average life is just, our average age of our fleet is just a little under 8 years old. Federal regulations is what determines when I can dispose of a bus and replace a bus. So, like I said, we're heavily federally funded, so we have lots of hoops to jump through. Buses need to last us at least 12 years or 500,000 miles. Roughly, they cost about $460,000 per bus, and that's a pretty base bus. That's not with all of the electronics and the fare box system and all of those things. We put those things in addition to that. So we do have a few more buses coming. There was a grant opportunity that became available to us through the VW mitigation settlement through the state. It was about $32 million is what was assigned that had to be used on buses. The type of bus, I know there was a lot of discussion on, should they be electric buses and how the state should determine those replacements. Actually, as that went through, the trust determined that they would leave it up to a local decision on how they were going to, what type of buses they were going to use. We selected the clean diesel buses only because of the fact of the age of our fleet, where you have some buses that are pretty old, obviously 2003s. And so when you kind of look at a statewide perspective, so I chair the legislative committee for the Wisconsin Public Transportation Association. So on a statewide range where we have about 270 buses in the state that are past their useful life. So part of that grant process was to, to eliminate emissions and all of those types of things. So we, I think ours ended up with the buses we replaced was about eliminating about 40% emissions or so on ours. Some cities across the state, like Appleton, that was replacing buses from I think 94 or 95, they had like a 90% difference in emissions. And so that's how grants were awarded and things like that, because it was a competitive grant process. And we, the money that $32 million actually provided 54 buses statewide. We got 4 of them. So about 1.9 million we got to replace 4 of those. So we are expecting, we're in the process of ordering those now. Usually takes anywhere between 12 and 18 months to get delivery once we order the bus. So it's not as quick as going to just, like Gandry or something, right? I mean, it takes us a little bit longer to do that. So we use diesel fuel. We have looked at some other options. As you can see, I mean, I kind of provided, my new buses, we get about 6.1 miles per gallon. And remember, we do a lot of idling. I mean, it's with buses all day. Our old buses only get 4.1. Our 2003, so we actually get a couple miles per gallon. Well, when you're putting on about 2 million miles a year, that's a big difference from our perspective. So we do about 250,000 gallons of diesel a year. And, the interesting thing is we kind of, back to my VW conversation a little bit, I think out of all the agencies that applied for some of that VW statewide, I think we had one agency in the state that is going to move ahead with electric buses. I know that's been a lot of talk. For us to buy a clean diesel bus is about $460,000. For us to invest into a electric bus, it's just a hair under $1 million. So when you have an aging fleet, you really have to look at, you're getting it's a 2-for-1. The other flip side of that is that electric buses are in our environment isn't really ready yet. An example would be, and I know Duluth hates it when I share this example, but it is, they had used their electric buses for the Super Bowl. They couldn't get them to run more than an hour. They all had to be towed in.
Oh.
They're just with the cold weather and things like that. It's not there. It's not a 1-for-1 ratio. And obviously, when you have when you have vehicles that are, almost $500,000, I cannot put an electric bus out there that can only get me about 150 miles when my routes are doing 260 miles a day. So I really, you have to have another bus to back that up all the time. And obviously, that's not something that we felt was the best interest for the city at this time. I think hopefully somewhere down the road that the development and all of those things get better, that's something we'd be able to look at doing. However, at this point, electric just isn't our answer. And I think, through that VW, I know there was a lot of different groups that were kind of trying to steer and want those dollars to be utilized just for electric buses. It's just from a statewide perspective with so much of the transit fleet behind the 8 ball, it just made sense to kind of stay with the clean diesel. So anyway, so that's, any questions with that? Does that make sense? Okay, all right, perfect. So with that, when we replace buses, we only do that when I'm able to come across federal grants and get awarded grants. Obviously, typically what happens is the buses we get are 80% funded. The 20% local share then is what the city does cover from the capital perspective. Each municipality does pay on depreciation and usage fees and things like that. But we do not ever purchase, not in my time anyway, have purchased buses that are paid 100%. We only do them when grants are there. So typically federal, we are obviously the 3rd largest city in the state. Because of us being over 200,000 in our urbanized population, we are now considered large urban. So we are a direct report right to the federal government. I no longer report directly to WISDOT. And that changed, I'm going to guess off the top of my head, about 5-6 years ago. With that, we do get some dollars through the state and all of that stuff that we still are automatically assigned to us. But typically, we've been pretty successful on grants that I have written from the federal aspect and some other ones, surface transportation block grants. I think I have now received 7 buses from them over the past 3 years. So we were the first transit in the state to be able to get grant dollars for public transit off of those grants. So Brown County Planning Commission serves as our MPO. And so I work very closely with them on securing as many grants as we can. So now that they got me in there, they'll never get rid of me. Skip that from your minutes. But yes, so they have been very, very supportive. And that committee is, that all goes through Brown County Planning Commission, which I serve on, and of course all the municipalities that we service are part of that. So.
Cole and see what he actually says.
Yep, you can. I chase Cole all the time for that. So Lisa Conrad is typically who does most of the work with us, and she attends all of our meetings and all of that. So they serve as our MPO and do a lot of reporting and statistical stuff for us. So, but they've been very good to help us out with that surface transportation block grant. So, but typically that's how our capital stuff comes. All of our capital assets are typically paid 80% by the feds. So. Some other fuel options that have come up over time is, CNG, and obviously there's a huge infrastructure change for that to occur for our facility. Right now, we actually store all of our buses within our facility, which is kind of nice. So some other area communities that have struggles in cold weather and had to close down and things, we're still able to operate, which we've been lucky with that. So everything we own stays within our facility. We fuel within our facility and all of that. For us to switch over to a CNG or something like that, the facility, our maintenance shop, and all of those things are just not constructed for that. So there's a pretty large infrastructure investment that would have to happen, and I think it's just lack of grant opportunities for that to occur right now. I did throw autonomous buses on here just as a slight discussion. I know there's been a lot of talk on that, and
I was going to bring that up if you didn't.
oh, were you? Okay, so I beat you to it.
You did.
So interesting. One of the conferences I was at, I did get to take a ride on one, so that's interesting. I think there are some things that right now they're designed to really truly be just for a set route. So how those work, if you're not familiar, is you actually put in the set route that it goes on. Now the issue that occurs is what happens if there's a road closure and we need to detour. That autonomous bus just stops. It does not know where to go because it is all pre-programmed route and only does what it's told. So, I mean, I think we might have talked at one time, I think I could see those being nice and like small, frequent downtown moves, those types of things. Again, I think they got a little bit of a ways to go before we kind of can get at that. I know they're starting to really use them as some shuttles and in certain areas, so that'll be interesting how that develops. And so it's kind of, I think at some point, a lot of discussions that I've been in pertaining to that, I think at some point you'll always have to have some form of an employee on there to kind of take over and conduct as certain things occur and stuff like that. So that's an interesting thing. And I can get it, right now I think the largest is like a 12 passenger that's in the US. Like I said, which may not be bad for some areas that we service. However, like my Route 6 or something like that, that goes out to NWTC, that's averages about 29 people an hour, obviously wouldn't work for that. So, but yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell what we do. I did bring this as well. So if you want to pass these around, this is just a little bit of backup information on kind of transit and our world a little bit and what we do. So.
Your cooperatively funded municipalities, how many municipalities do you actually cover? I know De Pere, Ashwaubenon, Alloway,
And Bellevue.
Okay.
Just recently.
Yep, and I have that listed on the back. Bellevue, we've always serviced. We expanded in Bellevue last year.
Right.
Quite a bit of increased service out there with Bellevue. It does come up frequently regarding Howard and things like that. And like I said, there's an investment. You pay, I know Swamico is very interested, but I can't get to Swamico without going through Howard, right? It's not a cheap service to provide in any means, but they all pay based on mileage.
You maybe get to Swamico if you do your duck idea.
I know, I do have a duck.
Oh, that'd be cool.
I know.
Across the bay on the duck.
I know.
Or up and down the pond.
Wouldn't have to deal with boats. Boats and trains is not one of our favorite things, I'm sorry. It puts me behind schedule very often.
We have problems with going from a river to a bay with a boat on a regular basis. That was what we heard from Fox River cruises. I don't like to go out to the bay very often.
Huh.
It's a loss.
A couple questions on
Just got to keep that water at bay.
budgets and
Yes.
how much of the budget depends on actual revenue from the riders?
Typically, in our state, about 15%. We typically come in about 17% has been ours recently. And that is something that has been pretty important to the commission over the years, is maintaining reasonable fares. We do have quite a few partnership contributions that we receive. Back in 2011, I implemented our game day routes with the Packers. They contribute quite a bit to us, which is nice. And I do have agreements with UWGB for the UPass program. So, and that works as well for Green Bay School District and for the Ashwaubenon School District. So students get on with just using their ID, and then the school, it's technically free at the fare box for the rider, but it truly is not free. UWGB pays for each trip, and then the school district pays as well.
What's it called? Not Campus Connect. It's
The College Express.
College Express thing for Campus Connect. That goes into TC, so does TC,
That
TC
service-
to GB?
It does, and we no longer have it. So we put that in place. It was not being utilized as much as what we would have liked to have seen.
Except by Professor Jeffries.
Yes. he needed to get
He
on call
loved it.
several times.
He did. He did.
Is, you know, you need to,
And so,
yeah.
yeah. And so we have existing service that services both of those.
Right.
However, that was more of a direct connection, and it just did not meet up to our system standards, and, you know, for the number of rides and things like that. So,
You know, if as TC and GB get more robust in their programming together, I think that might,
Yeah.
we'll see. I know Derek was disappointed, right?
But we still service, I mean, but still,
Yeah,
but
it's not-
and there really isn't that much difference.
no, it's about
Time
30
wise.
minutes. So Route 6, which services NWTC, it is an hourly trip, but buses do run every half hour, so it leaves at quarter to the hour and quarter after. So for us to get from the transit center to NWTC is about 30 minutes. So if you're there and you need to come down, you got about a half hour ride. And the same thing is true for UWGB. From transit to UWGB, it's every half hour service, and it's about 30 minutes to get there. So on the College Express, it really was taking us a little bit more, like 20 minutes, so they were saving about 10 minutes.
And as far as another budget question,
I think it's more psychological.
with looking at doing a 24/7 bus service in Green Bay. I know it's something that's been discussed. I know I discussed it when I was on council. And what, budget-wise, what would that look like if it were to ever happen?
So I am approximately, if we use roundabout numbers, I'm approximately a little under $9 million. That's 16 hours of service. I will tell you that one of the big concerns that has come up, and we have
It would be an extra $9 million?
well, no,
on top
I
of
mean,
your
it costs
current-
me about $9 million right now to provide 16 hours of service.
Okay.
So if you're talking about going to 24
Half again.
hours, yeah, so, and I think, and that's just roughly,
15.5?
you know, so, but I think, you know, we had, one of the things that has come up frequently is the ability to help employers with third shift workers. That has come up years back. We used to provide service till 10:45 at night. Back about 10 years or so ago, we had about a 10% decrease in federal funding, which for us, that's pretty substantial. So service got reduced by an hour. And so when we reduce that service by an hour, that's a challenge, because that truly means that the last trip leaves the transit center at 8:45, because by 9:45, we're completely done. Well, if you're going to work for 11 o'clock, not everybody wants to go there 2 hours early and those types of things. So that is something that has come up, and I've brought up several times to commission, and we looked at it to try to get into our 2019 budget. Obviously, there were some challenges with budgets, so that was not possible for us to do that. So in the governor's transportation budget, for 2019 that he has proposed an increase of $8 million for transit operating per year, so $16 million biennial. That number is not a pie in the sky number. That is a number that was provided by the Wisconsin Public Transportation Association. What that number does is that gets us back to 2011 levels. Okay, so it's not unrealistic to say, please put us back to where we were 8 years ago. So now, will that happen? I have no idea, but that, of course, would be our wish list. If in reality, if that $8 million did make it through the state budget and got put back into transit operating service, that would bring about an additional $150,000 to Green Bay Metro, which would allow us to add that additional 1 hour service back at night. So I think it was roughly $120 or so for us to add an additional hour. Because, and keep in mind that when we offer fixed route service, that extends our paratransit program and those types of things. And our paratransit service is something that we contract out. It's what we call a turnkey operation. All of the oversight is done in-house by us. However, we do contract the actual trip providing out. It's provided right now by a company called MV Transportation. It's a national company, and just roughly, I want to say the trips are $28 or so per trip. Am I right, Essie? I think it's $28 per trip we're averaging right now. In addition to the cost of the fuel, we do pay for the fuel. They fuel at our house. So it's not just running that bus. I mean, we also have to extend paratransit services during those hours. And the other thing that comes up with is Sunday service as well. I hear that often. Like I said, I mean, 56% come straight from the state and the feds. For us to expand service and that the state and federal portion not to go up would cost the local municipalities a large amount of money. In the time that I have been there, I think we have not increased budgets for the most part. I think very, very minor, if anything. We have, modified service quite a bit to provide. We provide more revenue hours of service now than we have in the past, with less dollars, just by making different changes and some consolidations of routes and things like that. But those are on my list. I do know I hear it often.
What's on your wish list?
Money. That's what's on everybody's wish list.
What would you do with it?
I think the first priority for us is extending that 1 hour service at night. So that is probably what I hear most right now. Is I was out in the I-43 Business Association meeting, and actually Mayor Schmidt was at that when I was there, and that's why I was brought there, was to discuss the fact that, why can't we get no additional hour service? They have a hard time filling their third shift. And so that's a challenge, and not that we'd be more than happy to do that. It's just how do we afford it and how do we pay for it? And I know at all different areas, when I'm in Madison or DC or wherever I'm at, it does come up often on what about businesses contributing? Can businesses contribute to transit? They can. I will tell you that from certain ones that I have spoke to, sometimes it's a challenge, because sometimes businesses feel that if they're in that community, it should be a service that's provided by that community. So that kind of gets to be a challenging conversation sometimes. So,
I would imagine they want directed service to, if they're going to contribute. Contribute to the transit. It's not, I don't want to do it citywide. I want you to serve my area then.
Correct. And sometimes they ask for closed door service, which we can't do. It's public transit, so we cannot limit who can use the bus. It has to be open to everybody. I can't say, it's just for your employees or things like that. It's with receiving federal and state dollars, it needs to be open to everybody.
What about long term?
So long term, I always have a lot of things going on my list. We do have on our Metro website, we have long-range plans and all sorts of things. We have all these obligations that we need to fulfill on a federal side. So we do have what we call our TIP, which is a Transportation Improvement Plan, that we are obligated to update on an annual basis, and it's a 5-year plan. Everything that any capital improvements that I purchase needs to be part of that plan. If it is not, then I can't use any grant money to purchase anything. So those plans are updated on an annual basis. And so we typically, everything that are kind of our wish list things we do put on there, they need to be somewhat realistic as well. So as opportunities come up, we can apply for those. So I think to kind of go back, I think one of our first priorities needs to be to look at extending that 1 hour service. I know I hear often on Sunday service. I'm not quite sure if the right answer would be our normal fixed route service is the answer for Sunday. I'm not quite sure if that usage would be there. Mm-hmm. So I think we'd have to study that a little bit to see what that is. I have 2 items that are kind of hanging on my list that we need to work on, and that is our paratransit service. We do contract that service out right now. I think we need to look at if that is the most feasible long term. And it's not uncommon for like the trip scheduling piece or something to be brought in-house, and then contract the actual trip providing outside. So that is something that we will be looking at. We are on a 1-year extension right now with our current provider. So in the next year, we will be looking at what options we want to do as we go for that. The next thing is to look at something that is the way that transit is provided today, I'm sure you all heard kind of, how does Uber and Lyft and all of these other individual things work into public transit. I think that the way that we see public transit today is probably not what you're going to see in 10 years. I think, the 30, 40-foot buses, I think there's always going to be a need for that in certain areas just because of capacity issues. But locally, obviously the transit we provide is much different than what you see in Chicago or something. We don't have millions of people in a very small condensed area. So I think that, what I've seen over the years of being there is as communities grow and develop and you get this kind of sprawl effect going on, everybody wants transit to get out there. And we can do that, but guess what happens? If it's not very good service, once an hour truly is not good service. And so I think increased frequency is the important piece to get people to utilize it. In our size community, for you to have a 1 hour trip is just not realistic. Who's going to do that? And so that's where it gets to be challenged, and it's increasing that frequency is what has to happen. Now, we service a lot of area that there's a need for transit. I totally agree with that. I'm just not sure it's a 40-foot bus 16 hours out of the day. I think that there's other opportunities for us to look at, and so those are things that I mention often, and poor Essie, she's nodding her head. She hears me with this drill all the time. But I think that we need to look at other things that we can do. We just partnered with Brown County Planning Commission this past fall on a voucher program that allows transportation opportunities for individuals outside of our urbanized area. So that's more of a countywide program. It is not paid by any of our local dollars. It is all paid either by state or county dollars, but it is managed in-house by us. And then we get like a small administrative fee to do it. But it allows individuals the opportunity that, like on a Sunday service, where there is no opportunity, if you qualified for the program, and it's paid, it's a pot of money that is called 8521. It is for senior citizens and elderly disabled population. And so if you qualify for that program, then you could come and purchase a voucher from us. So you could buy a $50 voucher for half the price. So that way, if you needed to, and then we have a list of providers that you could call and schedule that trip. So we have, I think, 3 local providers right now. 2, I like. 2 is 2. We have 2 local providers right now that provide those trips for us. So so that kind of helps fill the gap a little bit. It's not the perfect answer because there's only so much money in that pot. It's brand new, so we do expect that the need to probably be more than what we have. But it's a start. But I think that so that's kind of long range where I think we need to go. We kind of need to look at what other opportunities we have to provide those trips. And the Uber and Lyft thing comes up quite often. I help you to provide last mile trips. There's just some federal regulation pieces that the feds need to work out before we can do that. Just because we have a lot of oversight for drug and alcohol and Title VI and all of these different policies that we have to make sure that anybody we contract with are following those policies as well. And so until they can figure out how that piece would get implemented, it's not something we can do at this point.
I have a question.
Yes.
So part of the transportation, and I know everything comes down to money always, but are the bus shelters. Mm-hmm. And it seems sometimes that the bus shelters are really lacking. Mm-hmm. People standing out in the rain mm-hmm. and the snow, and people who are working hard anyway to try to get from one place to another. Is there any, has there been any grant money allowed for that sort of thing, or?
Yes, and so actually I'm hoping that I'm able to secure some now this year for us to replace some. Typically we try to replace 2 or 3 a year. I will tell you that they run approximately $6,000 a piece, roughly between $5,000 and $6,000 a piece, not including the cost of the concrete. And so depending on the location where we put them, that can be pretty pricey for us to put into our budget. So we do try to do at least 2 or 3 a year. It's not a lot. I have 1,000 bus stops. For system-wide, we have 1,000 bus stops. And When we put the bus shelter at the corner of Packer Land in Mason, it would be the southeast corner, right there on the Grand Central Station side. When we put that shelter out, that concrete that we needed to put there, just as an example, was $7,000, just because of how it had to be built up and the sidewalk that had to be put in. So and I've had some shelters that we were able to put in and the concrete was $1,000. So it just truly depends. So we do that. Staff looks at them. We worked with Brown County Planning Commission. They had done us a bus stop study. And so we do kind of have a priority list. Now we do have route changes that do occur, but we do base it on the usage. So we do have some great technology in place, so we can tell the number of people that get on at each stop and off and those types of things. So that's pretty much how we base the usage of them. But I would agree, we don't have enough shelters. And that is something, and we're hoping that we have an opportunity to get a couple other ones placed downtown and things like that. So that is something that we're always chasing to try to get more of those. But again, all of our capital is all done by grants. And so, because it would be difficult for us to add a large cost of that into budgets that seem to be challenging everywhere.
I know we put in 5 park benches, though, which would help some of the elderly from having to sit on the concrete or black grass or stand there that long. But we put some park benches in too. So.
Yeah, and 5310 it's a federal pot of money that and that is strictly for the elderly and disabled as well. And it's an interesting piece. We actually are the direct recipients of that money since we're over $200,000, and so we get assigned a set amount of money. However, we work closely with Brown County Planning Commission, and there's a whole selection process that we have to go through and things like that to award projects. And so we had applied for that previously, and we had, I think 7 benches, or 7 shelters, I think it was, that we were able to secure some dollars for and get those placed out there. So we do try to get them as often as we can, but that is something that does come up often, is the lack of shelters.
Patty, do you need to get downstairs?
Do they need me?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
So I think
I'm doubled up on meetings for the ethics committee as well, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being
Okay,
here.
Thank you.
Here, I will pass these cards around. If there is any other questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. So, do you know how to find me?
Do you mind? You never know.
No?
At the end of the bus.
At the end of the bus.
Thank you again.
Oh,
Thank
yeah,
you
I
very
have
much.
already.
Thank you for having me anytime.
We don't need that.
First, final, last one, all the shoes. I used to.
Thank you, Patty.
Working on PO through Baylor Regional Planning.
Sure. From the legislative perspective, and that's the most challenging. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will move on to the next piece of the agenda here, update from commission members on subcommittees and projects. So do folks have any updates? Deb?
I don't think you talked about this last time, did you? Colleen Gertz and Schreiber. Okay.
No, I did not.
So I met with Colleen Gertz just to reach out to her because and she's the director of environmental sustainability at the company, and that's globally, not just in Wisconsin, but all around the world. And so she has a really big job. And I heard that they were doing a lot of things there. Anyway, their goals for 2020 are zero waste landfill, 25% CO2 reduction. Oh, by the way, they reached the zero waste landfill. They reached the 25% reduction CO2 footprint. They are, as far as energy reduction, 25% they want to lower before 2020. She said they will meet that. Their water goal, though, is difficult. They probably will not achieve that. I'm not sure what it was, but and let's see, they are working with SBIT, Science-Based Targets Initiatives, which is a business or a site or something for companies to set a goal, and work toward the goal, commit to the goal, and then eventually be announced that they've met this goal. So they are working with them
So
for
SB what?
2030.
TI probably.
SBIT, Science-Based Target Initiatives. And the science-based target initiatives are based on staying under the 2 degree centigrade increase from pre-industrial and all that stuff. So they're very active there. They also work with U.S. Department of Energy, Clean Cities, CDP, Carbon Disclosure Department, the United Nations Global Contact Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy. They think that she thinks that Walmart is doing a lot and is going to meet a lot of goals, which is going to trickle down through so many places because they're online and people buy locally. And so she thinks that that will affect people all over the world. Also, McDonald's were 2 of the big ones that she talked about. Locally, Green Bay Packaging is doing some really great things. Kohler and Oshkosh Truck. They are really working toward this number 13, which aligns with the Paris Accord. Now I can't exactly remember what it is, but Schreiber Sustainability Committee will align the responsibilities report to the UN Sustainability Goals, which is amazing. And she said that, our country may have pulled out of the Paris Accord, but everyone around the world is working with the Paris Accord, assuming that, so you better get on the bus or, you're going to be left behind. So that's the way she feels. And she would like to work with us on transportation and renewable energy. She would also like to see our subgroup, so she might be able to interest members of their own sustainability group to assist the Green Bay Sustainability Commission. So. Schreiber. Yeah, pretty cool.
Good, thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome.
Other reports, updates from folks?
I just know that Deb's been talking to everybody about sustainability. I mean,
But not finding anything really. No meeting yet, so.
Yeah.
But we want to get together with Matt and David.
Dave Buck, yes. Talks because the comprehensive plan is starting. The county, I just heard today in passing, the county's starting their comprehensive plan as well, so which typically integrates other comprehensive plans as part of that. That's more outside of being in metropolitan area. The county's comp plan would be covering things, but nonetheless, that's something to look at, I think, as well. We can certainly deal with that at some point.
Great. Other updates? I have a couple. This actually happened before our last meeting, and I neglected to give an update, but Randy and I met with Ernie Stevens III. He's a tribal legislator with the Oneida Nation. They are currently working on some renewable energy goals at the tribal level. So they had the State of the Tribes address in Madison yesterday, and the Oneida chairman delivered that address and talked about the importance of addressing climate change and clean energy. So they're really at the beginning of the conversation on a lot of those things, but since that's an identified goal of this commission and they're starting to work on it, they definitely wanted to open up channels of communication so we can work on this at the regional and local level here. So that was a really exciting meeting. Another quick update, spoke very briefly to the Green Bay Neighborhood Leadership Council. Is that the correct name?
Yeah,
last week, basically just told the presidents of all the neighborhood associations, told them that we exist and would welcome any feedback and would like to really keep them in the loop on future work that we do. So that seems like a really great group of folks there. The other thing that happened, I guess, in the last month, Clean Wisconsin and the Fox Wolf Watershed Alliance hosted an event on coal tar sealants. There's a growing movement among municipalities in Wisconsin to ban a really harmful type of pavement sealant. And they had a really great event on that to talk about what that looks like. They reached out to us, so we're talking about what that would look like. But Deb, you have the date for that banquet. The same person that led that would be speaking. So if folks want to learn more about that, perhaps they might come visit us soon. But I think it'd be a great, the banquet.
I'll PDF this to
Okay,
everybody.
that would be
That's
great.
It's information I can do.
Yeah, it's informational. So that'd be a good event to go check out about the coal tar sealant ban. And then finally, I guess when Patty was talking about how much of the money comes from the state budget and that there's that $8 million proposed for transit in the state biennial budget, it reminded me of, I guess, a number of other budget priorities that deal explicitly with our goals. For example, the creation of an Office of Energy and Sustainability, a carbon neutral commitment for the state of Wisconsin by 2050. A lot of really cool things happening in the state budget. Regardless how you feel about any of those, the Joint Finance Committee is having 4 hearings around Wisconsin in the month of April, and one of them is at UW Green Bay. So that's an all-day thing. If folks want to go to that, there's going to be some really directly impactful things there. So that's Tuesday, April 24th, I believe. And that's
Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
We got bumped.
Oh,
They
it
got
did.
kicked out. No, our event got kicked out of
Oh, really?
the spot.
Jeez.
Yeah, anyway.
Well, now you're free that day.
No. We saw our event. Just in a different location.
Well, so that'll be Wednesday then, the 24th. So it's an all-day thing, but a really good opportunity to weigh in on the budget. And then, that's all the updates that I have.
Just remembered, I did talk to Senator Coles.
Yeah.
Do you know anything about, he's on a committee that's working on non-point as far as water pollution?
Yes.
Okay. He had
Share
said he's
of
got
natural resources.
a bunch of
It's a water
information he
quality-
could share with us.
Water Quality Task Force.
Yeah.
Right now,
The
there's
task force?
yeah,
Oh, yes, okay.
Mhm.
yeah, with Stosh Brzezinski. And they've been just talking. They've been talking. A lot of people. There's a couple bills. One's revolving around phosphorus trading. So they're just like gathering a lot of input about that. And then the other one is I just can't remember off the top of my head. I'm fuzzy right now today. But in terms of information and him just coming here to provide like a state.
He said he had some PDFs and stuff you could share with us, stuff to get information out to the public and maybe get some public interest. So I'll contact him
That'd be great.
and I'll pass those on once again. I'll funnel it to you and you can.
All right, share with everybody. Great. And I think that Water Quality Task Force is also having a hearing in Green Bay, but I think the date is to be determined. They're doing like 11 hearings across the state.
I looked to see if they had it scheduled. They had not.
Yeah, I think the only one they have on the books is in Lancaster, and then they had some agency-specific ones in Madison.
Just gotta go with the flow.
After our last, that reminds me, after our last meeting that Celestine and I met for a while to talk about green infrastructure and a green infrastructure with the code audit and potential funding opportunities for that. And so I think we were going to move forward potentially on working with the departments to maybe put a grant proposal in the future for the Fund for Lake Michigan.
Right.
Because it's on a rolling basis. Also, after that meeting, though, what came up was just recently, the Great Lakes Commission just released also a grant opportunity and to become a city to become part of their Green Infrastructure Champions cohort. And it's like it's not just a grant it's for mini grants, but it's also an opportunity to be in a mentorship network across the Great Lakes. And so,
Can you forward that to me? Did you already?
yeah, did I? I'm sorry.
Maybe it's been a little crazy this last
I put
week,
it
I
on
have to
our
tell you.
list. But our city, the Green Bay would be a good candidate for that program and to have be represented too. And that would be another good opportunity to do a code audit. The Fund for Lake Michigan also contacted me after that came out, and they are potentially interested in, if there's a project that could, leverage the Great Lakes Commission plus the fund's ability, that could be possible too. And so I told them I was maybe working with the city to
Is
work
this
on something. So.
P3GreatLakes.org?
Oh, that was today. That's something totally different.
Oh, okay.
No, I don't think I supported you to do this then. It's on the grants list that we were going to I started though. So it's a Great Lakes Commission, and they did a Green Infrastructure Champions grant the last year, a couple of years ago. Anyway, so there's definitely some opportunities. Everyone's excited, I think, to hear Green Bay might be interested in doing this kind of work. And so it's just kind of putting the pieces together to see what we want to do and what the departments want to do and so forth like that. And then also Celestine and I started talking about flood resiliency in this area because there's a lot of work on that. And I've been working with some people over the last few years who have been interested in it, specifically for around the East River. And I was just at a meeting yesterday also, and actually at the county level they're interested too. So it would definitely have to be like a regional effort, but anything flood resiliency is like federal, state, and local effort, collaborative kind of things together. So that could be something worth, I don't know if that fits in here or that's like a separate effort. But there's a lot of things you can do in flood resiliency, like restoring wetlands, so forth like that really overlap potentially with the city, and sustainability in general. And the social and economic future of residents here. So I think that's a really important thing to think about.
When I water my yard, am I restoring a wetland?
I don't know what kind of plants you have growing in there.
So that kind of reminds me, Celestine, when I had emailed you about the flooding. I mean, if there is an expert on staff that maybe we could have come and speak to us, just to bring that up again at the meeting. But I think to have somebody that's an expert in different methods that other cities have used, like bioswales and other unconventional.
It's more complicated than that.
Yeah,
what I've been proposing is like a work task, like a task force, basically, to deal with it, because you're dealing with hydrology that's starting up in Allegheny County.
Yeah.
So and like restoring some of just looking at the farmland. The Allegheny County conservation person was very interested in this. He loves flooding, apparently, Jeremy Freund. But if you just look at like past farmland and two different types of watersheds, they're both farmland areas, but one historically was not wetlands. Like the flooding downstream is not really that big of a deal, but the ones that have been converted from farmland and drained were wetlands and drained, that has like major implications for hydrology downstream. So there's a lot of moving pieces in this, so it depends what exactly you want. So green infrastructure is like one thing that could be helpful, but it depends on your definition, and it's going to be like, there's multiple levels to thinking about that in terms of flood mitigation.
And the reason why I hesitated is because I don't know that there's one person who has a bevy of solutions. And there are many solutions that may not have to do with moving water. So, and I'm not sure that the city is wrapped its mind around what that would look like, especially for that area. And I just found out that actually had flooded. This was actually the third time in 50 years that's flooded. There was one in the 70s, which I didn't know.
I remember 90.
Yeah, 90. There was one in the 70s too.
Well, the 70s one is actually the Great Green Bay flood.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And that's actually what spurred the development of the dike. So the reason you don't have as much flooding now is because you have a dike there. But there's definitely, from modeling, from GIS modeling, from my sea grants, that they can show like actually entry points potentially, vulnerable entry points, if the water levels continue to go up and then you have the storm surge on top of it. So like we can definitely bring in some information about flooding and stuff like that. And then the county, you have the county floodplain manager, Matt Hayroth, who would be a really good resource potentially. So it's a much bigger and complex issue than having someone, it depends what you want them to come talk about.
I guess Yeah, it's a huge issue, but we also have to look at what can we do as a city, like within the city, right? So that would be, what can the city actually do here?
Just from I think I've looked at it's either I think it's the comp plan, because I've looked before about what the floodplain and just flood policy is, and looking at flood mitigation and hazard stuff for my own before this committee was formed. And the current policy is hopefully the lines will be redrawn and then people will be out of the floodplain, like because that's really based on just insurance rates. So that's not a really good way to approach flood mitigation. And then you're also thinking about there's a lot of flooding potentially in areas that aren't even in the floodplain, and that has to do with development and land use and how to deal with that. And then also the Trump administration, this is going to be a big change moving forward, potentially in 2020, where flood insurance rates through FEMA are going to be now based on actual, more real insurance risk rates, rather than whether you're in the floodplain or not. So right now, 2 houses next to each other are paying the same rate, but maybe one has floods every time and the other one's fine. Well, that's going to start to be reflected in insurance rates. So it's actually a more accurate look at risk, which was going to be a giant wake-up call for the country.
That's like putting people.
But it's also going, so it's like bad, it's really bad and really good. So it's like there's just a major trade-off there, but you're going to be looking at places, and mainly places that can't afford flood insurance to begin with, and they're going to have even worse issues. So. This is a big social economic issue also to deal with as a city, so.
And an issue of equity as well.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe one of those who's harder hit. I've got pictures from 1990 and actually from 2010 of me canoeing in front of my street in front of my house.
Really?
And I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm 3.5 miles from the river, but it's all storm sewer.
Yes.
Surge.
So, and I don't know who, like, if you look at traditional hazard mitigation plans, I'm not sure who did who actually led that one here, but they're typically emergency managers who are going into the plan part, not the planning pieces. So, and I don't know when this one's up, when it was redone, or what's going on, or is it under Brown County?
Yeah, it comes to Brown County. A lot of that, the last one was done through Brown County planning, property listing survey department at the time. I know that they were heavily involved with redelineation of flood hazard areas, and that took a long time because it's also very political. I mean,
yes.
FEMA mapping.
Well, and there's new FEMA maps just about to start too. So, but you have flooding in places that aren't even in the floodplain because of development. So, and storm sewer issues, and streams that have been concreted over that should maybe be daylighted. But that's like major. Anyway, and I can also bring information about what, like, Milwaukee has had some really interesting flood mitigation projects in places, the Kinnickinnick River, and they've done a major buyout and major stream restoration areas. So there's lots of examples. Milwaukee's done a lot of projects around flood mitigation and working with cities and communities that are underserved.
Mm-hmm. I think that'd be good to see what other cities are.
Because they're big public health, I don't know, there's just, so. Depending on what you want, then maybe it would be good to know what you're.
What do I want to talk about? I want to talk about green infrastructure that could help mitigate flooding in the city that the city could actually control.
In the city, but I think it's bigger, so much bigger because the watershed. Like, I think taking a broader view of what green infrastructure means and thinking about natural, like green infrastructure upstream into large, like wetlands, like larger upstream will help. Also, but then there's the urban just stormwater green infrastructure too. So it's like how it's defined. And I really think you could have like a really good GI, green infrastructure vision that could meet a lot of sustainability goals, but I don't think it's good. Like, I don't think you could just focus only on the city.
It's not one thing.
And it's not one thing.
Well, we can't. Okay, I'm not saying we're focusing on. Obviously, the water comes from outside the city too, but we have to think about what can we do within the city limits because we're a city commission, right? So, taking into account what's happening outside of the city, and if we're going to create partnerships, that'd be fantastic. But what can we ask as an advisory commission to the city council? What can we ask them to consider doing within the city? And that's, those are those projects, those green infrastructure projects, right? Or restoration projects. within city limits.
Well, we might want to start by just looking at our current flood, our hazard mitigation plan, and seeing what kind of information's in there, and seeing if they had recommendations for mitigation actions. And like, I have no idea what's in it, so.
Good idea. Place to start.
Did you send something out, Celestine, a few months ago about sewer and water and?
Yes, that was
they were looking at the floods, 10
yes.
year, 100 year, 25 year.
Yeah, that was a report that was done by the Department of Public Works, Matt Hickenlevel, who is essentially the sewer engineer. And this was a report that was given to the Improvement and Service Committee about the updates that we would need to have to our infrastructure. That was in the pick and save area, in and around there. Mm-hmm. And essentially, the short story is that what we have in terms of infrastructure for stormwater management is built based on a residential layout. And we have a lot of commercial, but a lot of hard surfaces over there. So the infrastructure is not meant to handle all that water running off the concrete. So that's what that is about. So yeah, I did send that to everyone because it's a public document.
Yeah, last time they did the modeling, they did not look at green infrastructure solutions. And one thing we could do is maybe try to get some grant money and actually do like a green infrastructure. What in the city could we work on for green infrastructure that would have the biggest like climate impact? So the city of La Crosse did that kind of modeling. They actually found like permeable pavement options were actually the most cost-effective way for them to reduce climate impacts of flooding in their area, rather than bioretention or rain gardens actually. So that would really be something. I would say also what came to mind is when the new mayor was recently elected, he said he was talking about putting together some kind of plan for infrastructure. He used some other terminology.
Capital improvement.
Capital improvement plan, yes.
Yes.
And if you're talking about that, that is like potentially maybe a great opportunity to introduce into that kind of planning at like complete streets, taking into account biking, like walking, stormwater, and so green streets. The city of Milwaukee has, so every time a road project comes up for being reconstructed, there's a plan for integrating complete and green streets into it. So I think that would be like an entry point, like one of those opportunities where.
Well, I certainly think the audit, the grant to do that, to get some, maybe to, like you said, to join a mentor group, I think would be good. But I think that audit and the grant to do so would be good. I did actually give it to the development department to see what they could do with, that was the, not the one that's due next week, the other one, the one you meant, the Great Lakes Fund.
Fund for Lake Michigan.
Fund for Lake Michigan, thank you. So I just need to follow back up with
a green audit,
and I can help write it with them.
That plan for applying for grants too. Once you have a green infrastructure plan or an audit in place, point out
the audit, the audit would be good. The audit is to help reduce policy barriers, which is good. You could couple it though, potentially with a plan, like more of a model, like the modeling plan too, of like what would actually help us here, so with the goals of reducing flooding and improving water quality. So I don't know, that would be something to think about. You could definitely couple them, but
as part of that. So my department runs, solid waste transfer station. We are, the timing of that flood was really interesting because the day after the flooding, the state imposed what are called roadway weight limits. So at the point in spring where the frost starts coming out of the ground, the state says, okay, that any oversized overweight permits that are out there for hauling are on hold. You can't haul more than 80,000 pounds gross weight on a semi. Now we regularly haul 120,000 pounds because of garbage, the weight of garbage, how much you have to get out of there. We actually have a 60-day grace period now because of the flooding, because of so much extra garbage coming in, and the weight of the garbage increases because of water. So in a normal day, we get 600 tons of garbage through our transfer station. We would be getting between 800 and 900 tons. For several weeks, we're still high, and we couldn't empty out the transfer station, which means that wet garbage is actually a hazard in itself, not biological necessarily, but it generates heat. And if you get too much heat in the garbage pile, it starts on fire, and then you've got a real problem. So there are all these consequences of just having that flooding in itself that increases the cost of other infrastructure that aren't even think about in terms of that. I mean, the amount of material we are sending still because of that flood, every house that comes down, is 80 tons of material or somewhere in that neighborhood, and that's 4 semi-loads. It's because of the weight and everything else. So there are other, besides just even what the city would look at in terms of infrastructure needs, the damage to property, damage to, that damaged stuff goes someplace else and then becomes other infrastructure issues. So I hadn't even thought about that myself until we got into this pretty good. We had to get the state of Wisconsin Department of Transportation to give us all our truck drivers right now have a letter in there saying, they're exempt from weight limits for the duration of the 60-day period. It's because they get stopped for overweight permits all the time. And they get fined by state patrol, so they've got them in cabs, so they get pulled over looking heavy, which people look heavy.
You can tell by looking it's heavy. Wow.
Yeah, heavy man. You can tell heavy. They got those third wheel, that third axle down there running heavy, for sure.
Ah, okay. There's a tip off.
Yeah. You want more of those axles on the ground. They do less damage to the roads than. So, anyway, that's another whole consequence of this whole flooding hazard issue that we've been. I never thought about it. I'm not on solid waste, the garbage side. I'm on the recycling side, so I think a lot of their stuff. Recycling numbers went up too because you get a lot of wet paper.
And I mean, you talk about, maybe what I agree with, like looking at maybe the urban side of this stuff, but the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District is buying land outside of their service area to restore it back to wetlands for exactly just to be a sponge, to prevent development from making more water come into their service area to deal with. So, unfortunately, the water doesn't care about the municipal boundary at all. So I do agree we could just use some internal city stuff, but I really think we have to be thinking. Well, I mean, maybe not within this commission, or maybe in the future, as part of a broader collaborative partnership, or taking those opportunities.
I did a GIS study in the 90s for the Bear Creek Preservation their foundation of Bear Creek watershed, looking at replacing farmland back to wetland, and because of exactly that, trying to control floods downstream from along Bear Creek and control it better. Their purpose of that plan at that time was actually looking at erosion control rather than flooding per se, but it's exactly what was modeled. I ran a model on we actually used a stormwater model to look at all that and look at how much flow you have downstream by restoring wetlands upstream. I don't know that it ever was really implemented because the cost of purchasing active farmland and putting it back into wetland is prohibitive. And now a lot of that's even developed.
But there are entities thinking outside there just to deal with these issues too.
Yeah,
So.
MMSD had a long-term program to actually install more like what you're thinking in terms of rain gardens and giving rain barrels or at lower no cost. Actually, one of my rain barrels at home came from MMSD out of Milwaukee because my dad bought it and he didn't want it. They were doing, those were just little.
There's some really innovative stuff too. There's like in the city of Bloomington, Indiana, they have a gigantic rain park, basically. That's a city block that is, it's water. It's a water park. It's a beautiful feature of the city, but it's all through rainwater, and it's a retention pond basically, but it's really gorgeous, like little waterfall. So I think there's some innovative stuff that urban areas are doing that we could look at around the country and come up with something.
So Christine,
Yes.
she really would like to do something with the East Town Mall area, right? And you know what? There's some really interesting stuff. If anyone knows about the Menominee Valley redevelopment, I mean, it was a giant brownfield. It's right near Miller Stadium, Miller Park. And it was a brownfield forever. It used to be like the train building station, machine shop of the world, basically. And they've redeveloped it into an eco business park, which is they reconstructed wetlands, stormwater wetlands, and there's like 20 different large corporation businesses there, and all the water from these businesses go filter down through these constructed wetlands, and then eventually filter out to the Menominee River. I'm sorry. But there's the Urban Ecology Center there. They use it for outdoor classroom. It connected to it has a ton of connections with the neighborhoods who are traditionally not connected and very segregated, and then helping people get down to the jobs down there, and so it's a really amazing sustainable development project that incorporates all the pieces we care about. And they started off, there was a lot of partnerships involved, but what they did, one of the things they started off, they did where they put a bid out, or competition, basically a design competition. So design competitions of what it might be or what it might look like actually helped figure out this whole thing. So I mean, that's something that the city could put on if you had a certain area, say, okay, we want to redevelop this, and I still have the pamphlet of their design standards for what the site would have to meet, the environmental sustainability standards the site would have to meet, and then they had a competition based on, and the winner got to, be the engineers for the project. But so those kind of things could be something that's. You're talking about those big scale projects with big areas that you're ugh, what do we do with this? So,
and as we build new things, just like what we were talking about before with the roads, perhaps in the comprehensive plan, the city comprehensive plan, the city could agree that there could be so much green infrastructure or so much connectivity of neighborhoods, or that could be in the plan, in the comprehensive plan, and we could just do that in Indiana or Milwaukee or Easttown. So it's really exciting.
All right, is that it for updates here then? Very informative update and informational session.
But sorry, I guess I just want to know where. This is the stuff I could talk about for hours. So knowing that there's interest, definitely maybe want to go after a code audit, but in terms of the green infrastructure plan, if there's interest in looking, the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District did a GI plan, so did the modeling to kind of identify where and how much green infrastructure would be needed to reduce the first inch of rain or something like that for this city, which is huge. It's 100 million gallons or something. Right. So if we set a goal like that or something, I don't know, that this stuff really helps, preserve gray infrastructure and is too, so they're all part of the solution. So I don't know if we want to go after it. That would take definitely some funds to look at that in a more holistic way.
Is that something we can put on it as an action item for the next meeting that we would recommend or suggest, or whatever the term is, that the city conduct a green infrastructure audit?
I guess I think so, but I've been trying to carve out some time to do kind of a strategy like you two guys came up with for the water resources part. And so rather than just trying to go after a bunch of things, actually have a more strategic plan about it. So
to get together in between meetings and kind of put them together for the meeting?
Because you guys set goals and kind of had some actions lined up, right?
For the renewable energy? Yeah.
So you
I
can
think
have
that's
a
a
path
great idea.
moving forward rather than, So for the water resources one, it could be flooding and water. I mean, it's water quality and flooding.
I volunteer to work with you on that.
Oh, good. Finally, I'm getting
Except, no, you gotta stop.
I'm sorry.
We're getting carried away now.
No, it isn't going to be until mid-May at the earliest. Things there's just too much other stuff going on.
Yeah.
And I'll be gone for a while. So. But I mean, because it's a real, I would love to work on that area. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's always, I can just start something and then we can, I apparently have to contact people individually. for feedback, Seth?
For like,
Anything?
if there's a document that you send out, we can't work on it like in a chain email, but if you work in like less than quorum groups, you can work on documents together.
Like in person?
In person is fine too, as long as
No,
it's not a
but
quorum.
not on email.
Well, no, as long as it's not,
One
so
side.
you can't email it to me and me email it to Seth and Seth,
I
as we
see.
go through the whole.
As long as you're not.
It's still one-on-one.
Yeah, no, yeah, as long as it's left under a
That's a
quorum.
technicality.
I thought it was as long as it's under a
Can I
quorum.
email it
Is that a
to
voting
Nan
quorum, though?
and?
Yeah.
Well, if you
Sometimes
Under
it's just
the
not,
number
it's just not
is
good to
fine,
do.
which is fine, yeah.
I mean, if there were 3 or 4 of you, then
Yeah.
Google
If there are
Docs
3
is
people
probably-
working on
One at a
something
time,
else.
a conversation one at a time between any of us has no issue with quorum.
Mhm.
So, a conversation of 5 of us at one time would have an issue with quorum.
Right. Or like when we put together the green tier resolution, that was Deb, Chase, and I, and that was in person, and that was totally fine. So, 3 people, 4 people,
And we brought it to committee,
and we
and
brought
so.
it for it.
Mhm.
So,
I guess I'm proposing that as the next step. It's
Yeah.
just to move forward on more of a strategy plan, and then we can flesh out what we want to go get money for.
That'd be
And we can, you can let Celestine, or, Seth know if, between now and then, if you think it's ready to be, presented at the meeting, and then,
Yeah.
we can discuss it then, and if we decide it's not ready for council, then we can, say that our recommendation is to, I guess hold it over for another month. Right? Eventually, right, that could be the recommendation, so.
sure.
But I think, yeah, we should get moving on it. That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Awesome. Well, moving on then to our next and final item here under regular business. Discussion with possible action on creating a list of grant opportunities that complement our goals.
Come on.
So,
You want me to give you a compliment?
I don't know, do you have stuff to present on this one?
You have lovely eyes.
I do not.
I was looking through the Public Service Commission, not much right now.
Yeah.
Not much right now. I did talk with the school district again about that one, because we worked on that last year. And they lent their expertise to the city, which was nice, to kind of see what the district did and put numbers together, and they'd be willing to do that again. So hopefully that grant cycle will come open, hopefully within the month, because it did last year around this time.
April last year. I know that might be a little bit, in that pot of money with the PSC might be in flux, because if that's a multi-year, like $8 million pot, so it should be ideally open for another 4 years. But if the governor's proposed reorganization of the Office of Energy and Sustainability in the Department of Administration goes through, they'll take that from the PSC to that department. So I don't know if that's what's holding it up, because I thought it would be up by this year too. And I think with this particular action item too, I think it'd be good to discuss how we want to track grants internally, and how we want to, I guess, sign off on certain grants or decide to pursue. Julia, did you have thoughts on this agenda item?
No, I just started a list because I was like, just so we know when stuff's coming up, so it's not like at the last minute, or we know once we have things that we want to, projects or ideas we want to go after, then we know maybe there's this one's coming up or this one's next year, or just the information about the grant too, what it requires. Some have match requirements, some stuff like that have different requirements or things to know. So I just started a list, and then you said we should figure out how to manage that.
Can we have a living spreadsheet for it? So do we all use Google Docs, or we don't?
No, we don't have, I mean, Google Docs isn't at the city. So, and I have to say we struggle with how we can actually share documents here. That's something that we have to work on, because we don't have like a really good document sharing. But what we could do is, my suggestion would be to get something started, and then I just provided his information at every meeting, every monthly meeting, and then right then and there, we can add to it, or you can give me something prior to the meeting, and I can add it to that spreadsheet. But unfortunately, we don't have a way to really share spreadsheets here. We don't really use Google Docs, even
Okay.
though Google Docs is a nice sharing tool.
Yeah. Could we as commissioners, I mean, there's no legality preventing us from having a Google Doc to drop our
Isn't
notes
that a
in?
quorum?
It has a commission, yeah.
That has a commission.
I would not advise.
Okay.
IT has been very, because I thought Google Docs would really be something, a way we could do a lot of sharing. I mean, IT,
We have to figure out how to do that with our own software. But I think what you certainly could do is because what you're asking, I think what you're asking is there a way to say, hey, I hear of this great grant opportunity, here's when it's due. Here's what the short requirements are. You can provide, I mean, I think you've started a little bit that, but one-way communication informationally is really super easy to set. That always works until I can think of something better.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the other question is just generally, is there documents commissions can share, instead of having one person with one master, is there something that we all own? That's just one.
Do people use Dropbox? Is that some of the same legality issues as
Yeah.
Google?
Yeah.
Because then it's not an open record. I mean,
Yeah, Brown County doesn't even allow us to use Dropbox. We use actually a software now called Box.
They dropped the drop.
Yeah, but that's because they actually administer Box through a license agreement. So everything in Box is stored. All the files that we upload, any access is all stored as part of the county records. Because of the licensing, how that works. So it's not Dropbox is the corporation that owns Dropbox, keeps track of things. Box.
Same with Google.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
Yeah, it's not locally owned. I don't think.
And yeah, when I talk about sharing documents, it's really more staff sharing documents that I would love to be able to, do. But I think
The city doesn't use SharePoint.
no, we don't use
I
SharePoint.
think I'd use that.
I think for this case, I'm
Yes.
fine with you just having and then having it, because it's not going to get that different
No.
from time to time.
And I think
As it
A
we build
monthly
it.
thing.
yes, if that's satisfactory for now until I can find another solution.
So yes, we can have a living spreadsheet, but no living spreadsheet exists that we can have.
Yes.
Okay.
That's very Kafkaesque of you.
Isn't it? Totally. Metamorphosis. All right.
Great.
So what we're going to do is fill in the blank for me.
So there's going to be a grants thing on the agenda at every meeting, and then if there's opportunities, send them to me. Great. And then we'll get that added. So I'll track that, and then that'll be the same 8-day deadline as for the agenda.
Right.
So, and we already got a started copy from Julia.
Yeah.
So.
Is that satisfactory to everyone?
Should we have a motion on this item then? It's regular business.
We could.
Yeah.
Make a motion.
What's the motion?
The motion is that we have a regular item on the agenda for each
Grants?
month to provide a list of grants.
Or not just to discuss grant?
What do you want
To track.
to track?
Yeah.
Isn't it just
Track
to-
and update.
Track and update, yeah.
As
For
needed.
update and track.
Well, I don't know
Update and
if
track.
that's that.
Compile, update, and track.
I like it.
There you go.
Great.
Second.
Who was the original one? Mark, and second by Ned.
Okay.
All right.
Right. Mark. Second by
Ned.
Ned.
All those in favor?
Oh, whoops, wait.
And we can start working on grants now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because the
Yeah,
council
that-
said yes.
Okay.
They did say, okay.
Yeah, went through.
Good.
Big news.
I guess
Okay.
that begs the question. Council said yes we sent a request out.
To us being able to
How do we
start
get-
working on grants
how-
without
if-
their
if
approval.
Ned didn't just say that now, how would we have known that they said yes? Would we have to go through and read the minutes
Council
every
minutes.
time? Or?
Well,
Need a city council.
I mean,
That's
go,
the commission.
yeah, I'm your council.
Right, okay,
So-
but
It would be nice to get
But-
updates on
Yeah, you
all
should
the
have told
things
us that, Randy.
Or just
Yeah.
like things that have been, like the green tier, I have no idea
Oh,
what's, the stuff
well-
that we started and I don't hear
But
much
anything
about.
that goes to council
Stuck in
will be taken, I mean, anything that we do
That goes
will be
on.
taken up at the next council meeting.
Should we have a
Report it out.
report from an alderman at our meetings maybe?
We're doing it.
Could say, I could go over what the agenda items were, and then, I mean, basically it's gonna be all our agenda items passed.
Okay, because
Next, any questions?
Cool.
It's really uplifting.
So all you gotta do is look at the agenda.
Yeah,
That
but
would be
that's like
interesting.
a lot of. So would you like?
Certainly.
Would you like? I mean, the items that come to council, I can just easily quick say, "Yep, this all happened. Yep, it's all good." Plus, there's that one thing that we discussed, like in the fall, that was supposed to go to improvement in service for disposition. Legal looked at it because Department of Public Works wanted legal to look at it. They said, yeah, there's nothing wrong with what we had done. I'm not sure where that is. So I need to find out if that's been added to the agenda. They meet, actually, they're meeting tonight, so I didn't have a chance to look at the agenda.
Let's go say hi after.
Yes. Hello.
Open.
So that's easy for me to just say, hey, this passed, or this has been given to another committee because, and Essie and I are just sort of having a little side conversation. As you know, right now, everything's advisory. A lot of things that would require, especially grants or anything that would require another department, would have to go to that department's standing committee. So, for now.
All right. We'll back
Okay.
to the main motion.
Ready to
All those
vote?
in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay.
All right, the ayes have it. On to our last
I know.
item,
Move to
adjournment.
adjourn.
I know.
There's a motion to adjourn by
Second.
Ned, second by Essie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? It passes, all right.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.